Well, hi there. Good evening. Uh, I wanted to touch base on a particular subject that I've brought up a little bit here and there in the YouTube videos that I've made in regards to worldwide politics. Of course, it is a sensitive subject, but it's not the first time I've ever brought up sensitive subjects, so I will continue with this one. It is more than reasonable to suggest that the white man apologizes for nothing at all. It is also fair to say that for most countries, it was white men who played a significant factor in either their economic decline, their military ambition, geopolitical importance in the world. It is more than fair to say that it was probably white men that played a significant factor in that. And I don't see how a flimsy apology from whomever is in charge of whatever country is going to remedy that. There are so many countries that could be easily named where the white man went over there, whether it was a couple hundred years ago or whether it was last week, and really caused them a lot of usually financial grief. Whether it was stealing their resources, inhibiting them from trading with other partners, which would have gained their wealth, which is both good and bad, because sometimes they were with unfriendly with nations and they just wanted wealth, and sometimes they just wanted to get by in the world, try and make something out of their country. And it is fair that Western Europeans probably went over there and prevented that from happening because we didn't want any real competition. There are many countries in South America, for example, that had oil. Before the white man went there and really caused them a lot of grief, there was the potential that they might have traded with what I would refer to as neutral rivals. Ones that are also trying to improve the prosperity of their own country. However, because of what European settlers in the Americas did, they had sort of a history complex about it and tried to make trade deals with unfriendly nations towards Western powers. And of course, were intervened not just by the Americans, but a lot by the Americans. The Brits played a factor. The French were all over the place. And if you want to factor in the Spanish and the Portuguese, you could do that, although there were varying degrees of success from their escapades. Like, there almost isn't a country in the world that, at some point or rather, the Western powers have not gone in there and caused them all kinds of grief, as I've said. You point at India. England was there for over 400 years. Arguably, they're still there because India, whenever it has border clashes with China, whom's outpacing them military-wise, they go to usually the United States, but also England for military aid, advice, and all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of humiliating having a tiny little island rule over your one for hundreds of years. Not to mention all the plundering that was going on. You take China, for example, there was a lot of division there. 100 years, this century of humiliation, as they call it. That was, it was a powder keg that all it needed was a little stirring, and look where it ended up. Africa, ungodly things have happened there so many times, and this whole white European attitude towards them didn't dissuade them. And sometimes when peoples try to dissuade other peoples, or even on an individual basis, all it does is strengthen whatever anti the other person's beliefs are. For example, you could take voodooism, for example. White missionaries do not like it. I mean, a lot of people don't actually for various reasons, but we'll use the white missionaries because it is a very ungodly thing to do. To eat the brains out of a vulture. It's kind of a disgusting thing to do. But they believe that some of them do that it gives them power, and this was something over the generations could have been whittled out. Instead, what the missionaries did was strengthen their resolve to do these backward things. That's the same thing with North Korea. The United States tried to put pressure on them, and when they did that, they made things worse. You could be more subtle in the things you do, and eventually you'll kind of get your way if you do it correctly. However, if you lay the hammer down too hard, too fast, you either annihilate your enemy, which I guess might have been something that they were thinking about doing, or they either also survive and it just strengthens their resolve to resist because they don't want to be like you. And they don't want to adopt your values because they believe in their own. And this all ties into where was the Western powers? Where weren't they in the world? I think we've been everywhere. At one point in history, in the last few hundred years, you can consider that fair game as far as it being current history. They're in Australia. They beat up on the Aborigines there. They beat up on the Native Indians over here. That's not fair. We're supposed to call them indigenous. But then again, this is getting back to the why are we apologizing for anything? And you look at the blacks in the United States, and some of them want reparations. Yeah, I'd like a paycheck too because I'm of Irish descent, as well as English and Dutch and a few things out of there. At one point in time, my ancestors were abused. Where's my paycheck? I'm not going to get one. And where is all this money coming from to pay such a large amount to a small group of people, relatively speaking, in the United States, like the blacks there? What about the blacks in Africa? Oh, I forgot, because you were born in a certain country, you're privileged. Because we don't use the term slaves anymore. I mean, okay, sometimes people feel like they're slaves because of whatever reasons, but you're not in shackles, unless you want to be because you're into that sort of thing. Yes, you have to work for a living. That's part of life. And most people have to do it. That's not slavery. However, why are we paying reparations, or why should the Americans pay reparations to the blacks that live over here, and basically the blacks that live in Africa get nothing? They get the garbage, if they're lucky. And why is that group of people more deserving of some form of payment? They didn't do anything to earn it. They can't even prove that their ancestors were slaves. Most of them cannot, by the way. It's very hard to trace your roots back a couple hundred years. It's not easy. And I argue if you cannot prove it, then you're not entitled. And I don't know what the percentage of people is that are of black descent that cannot prove it, but I can guarantee you it is mighty high. And yeah, like I would think that this should be considered an insult, that the Western powers are like, oh, we're sorry. And to make it up for you, we'll shame the regular white people, because you look at the white guys in the upper echelon of society. Are they really affected? Are they really that bothered? Does it affect them? The bottom line is it doesn't. In fact, they're probably even more racist, more discriminatory, except they include white peasants as they would look at us. You go, okay, well, hey, a black guy going with white chick, that's super offensive. And yes, it is kind of offensive, actually. However, if you are a white male that can score with any colored chick you want, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, at any given time, because women are actually quite spoiled creatures and quite predictable and quite greedy. They're attracted to money. They're attracted to guys that appear to be cool, whether it's because they own a nice car and have a good job. It all helps if you have money, good job, physical attractiveness, lots of friends, popular. You have a pleasant demeanor, or at least enough to get the fish on the line, so to speak. Then it doesn't matter what kind of an asshole you are afterwards. And so what I'm saying is there are white guys out there that are like that, and they don't care about shitting on anyone, and that doesn't make them better people. And they have plenty of white women that, and all colors of women, that fawn over them. And so if a white male grows up in a society and is successful in scoring as many different types of chicks as possible, the good kind, I mean, obviously, do they care if another white man that has nothing to do with them gets nothing, and his woman runs off with a colored male? Do they care about that? No, they don't. And that could be because they're super racist and they're just prejudiced against everything. Obviously there's free will and the ability to pick and choose with willingness of the participant in what it is you do or do not do. However, I am seeing a disturbing trend in this world, and it's obvious to see, where if you are a white male who is not usually born into it, super wealthy, in order for the Western powers to apologize, they go, oh, look at this slob, he's a redneck, he's stupid, he's all these things. Do you accept our apology now because we insulted another white guy? Here's some of his money. We'll tax him, and you'll get paid. I'm a better person now. Fuck you. You ain't a better person. And, there just isn't enough money. America never was as rich as people thought it was. I mean, in the days where people went, oh, the United States is the greatest superpower and all that, you take into consideration the technology they had, what they accomplished. Yeah, those were a lot of things, but if you consider that wealthy, then you're really not very clever at all. I mean, there's so many areas that are only recently developed, and it took time over time and things like that. And everyone knows that Britain, for many years had many parts that were slums. And now they're doing better, of course, as society advances. And we have to look to what countries are going to be rich in the future. And the Western powers and their leaders do not want to give up that wealth. So they will keep those people down. So their pathetic apology, even throwing a white woman at them, maybe giving them a little bit of basically the poor white man's money, isn't going to solve the greater problem, which is that the Western powers leaders are bent, corrupt, and will do anything to anybody. But another factor to consider is that a lot of those countries weren't very good anyway. Like in South America, they were, into playing with, they invented basketball, or it was such a different sport back then. They would actually use somebody's head, for example. In Africa, there was voodooism, of course, and tribal warfare. In India, it had its fair share of problems it just had problems. I won't get into them. China, also similar but different type of problems. And, it was basically the same everywhere. I mean, the Aborigines in Australia were cursed in the sense that they lived the same existence over and over and over and over again and never learned a thing. And this isn't the white man going, oh, look at these primitives. This is like looking and going, okay, tell me what you know. That's funny. I heard that story before. And my ancestor 100 years ago heard that exact same story before. You have the same story over and over and over and over again. That's a curse. It really is. To live the same existence over and over and over again as a people. So, I mean, the white man actually did improve some things. Hey, wake up in there. You're doing the same thing over and over again. You're never going to learn anything if you don't, do something a little bit different. Yeah, but getting down to the money part of it is, where's all this money coming from? The peasantry white male class, and I'll consider people, who are worth millions of dollars in this same class, because they're nowhere near the upper echelon as far as how rich they are. There is not enough money for reparations, even for just the blacks in the United States. It doesn't exist to those people, because the powers that be crush anything that gets in their path, and they're just as racist as any other white person. When it comes down to it, handing over money for things you didn't do because they happen to look a bit like you is bullshit. And some people will say that's enough to be a racist. And I don't think that's fair. I think that's completely unreasonable. And I think they're the ones that are, in fact, being racist. In fact, demanding money specifically from white people is being racist. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they got a paycheck from anywhere, they would just take it, usually. Most people would, without even thinking about it. But it is, in fact, it's disturbing that modern day propaganda that's been going on for a couple of decades now, which is what I'd consider normal, is grossly misleading. It's catering to people who are not particularly bright, because not that I don't think there are bright people of particular creeds, nationalities, races, and all that sort of stuff, because there are ones that are very brilliant people, and they see through this web of lies, and they see that people from their background are believing these catered to lies, and I would consider that very insulting. But yeah, that is the direction society seems to be going in. And I heard it once described as a pendulum. It goes one way, and then it goes back. One way, then it goes back. And with some of the, peasantry white folk that I see, who actually have fallen for this form of mental slavery, that what if it really doesn't swing back? What if there aren't enough people that are quote-unquote woke? And what even is the definition of woke? That's a good question. What's the definition of woke? What does that mean exactly? The propaganda has warped that sense of what that word should mean. That woke just means you understand your surroundings and a little bit about what's going on and how someone's trying to manipulate you, because everyone's being manipulated by somebody, or trying to be manipulated. That's what woke should mean. Woke doesn't mean wearing a rainbow flag t-shirt. Woke doesn't mean listening to rap music, being a white guy. That's not what woke means. That means you've bought into that form of thinking, which is your choice because we live in a free country, supposedly. Um, and there are other terms that have been dismantled. Pride used to be a good word. It still is a good word, but there are many people out there that use it for their own advantage, and their definition of pride does not have to be the same as yours. I am proud of what the English accomplished for hundreds of years. We conquered another continent, a few other continents, as a matter of fact. We amassed great wealth at the time, and hopefully in the future we continue to do so, and our standard of living goes up. That is what I call pride. I don't call pride some idiot, with I don't know, some sort of. I can't even think of the words to describe it because it's so different from me. Yeah, and this is all roped into this fake society that people are accepting because it's catering to their beliefs, whatever screwed up beliefs they have. And sometimes that's not people's fault. That's simply the surroundings they were born in. But other times, people should know better, and they don't. And to summarize, no, the white man shouldn't apologize. The world would be a very different place if we didn't go around conquering other countries and other continents and interfering in other people's business, political atmospheres. And I honestly don't think it would be better. I mean, one of the best history lessons to learn is the rise of Attila the Hun. He was an Asian male who came from the steppe of Asia Minor. And some say that they originated from northern China. Now, that is open to debate, but they beat up on the Western powers at the time of the Romans for quite a long time, and history could have turned out very differently. I mean, the world could really just be ashes where trees used to be, people in shackles making metal equipment, over a fire, and that's assuming they didn't wipe out people. Yeah, these are all assumptions because that didn't actually happen, so we'll never know. Thank God for that. But it almost did. So that has shaped the white man's philosophy on the world. And that's my summary of this. And no, you ain't getting an apology. And I don't think you deserve any money either. So, I'm going to wrap this up. Talk to you people later.